Michael Ross had always believed that the world could be broken yet still beautiful. But the day his family was destroyed was the day beauty died inside him. The quiet suburbs of their small town in Colorado stood still as the evening wind brushed gently across the white fence of his home, while his daughter Emily and his son Aaron laughed in the living room. That night was supposed to be like 1,000 others, warm, simple, peaceful, filled with laughter, comfort, and the uncomplicated happiness of being together. But destiny, silent and merciless, was already sharpening its knife. Michael came home early that evening, carrying ice cream for the kids, a bouquet of white lilac for his wife, and a heart full of hope for the promotion he was expecting the next day. He imagined Emily's bright smile and Aaron's excited shout when he walked in. He imagined telling his wife that he would finally be able to buy the small farm their daughter always dreamed of. Everything felt right. Everything felt safe. But fate had other plans, darker, colder, and soaked in cruelty. The scream came like thunder. It tore through his chest before he even realized what he was hearing. Then came the explosion, sharp, metallic, violent, shaking the walls and shattering the world he knew. Michael dropped everything in his hands and ran toward the burning doorway, the heat slamming into him like a wall. Flames roared through the living room, devouring furniture, memories, and the laughter of the children he could no longer hear. He pushed through the smoke, coughing, blinded. Every step a battle against a fire that felt almost alive. With bare hands, he lifted a burning wooden beam, blocking the hallway, ignoring the pain tearing through his skin. He screamed the names of his children, but only fire answered. And then he saw them. Emily's small hand lay beneath a fallen shelf. Aaron's toy truck melted beside him. The sight broke something inside Michael that would never heal again. He dropped to his knees, gathered their lifeless bodies into his burned arms, and cried in a voice that shook the burning walls themselves. The fire department arrived too late. The house was gone. His children were gone. His world was ash. When the police declared it an accident, something inside Michael snapped. He saw the burn patterns, too clean, too precise. He smelled the chemicals, not from any ordinary fire. And outside the window, half hidden under grass and soot, he found heavy blueprints the police never mentioned. Someone did this. Someone planned this. Someone took everything from him. And Michael Ross, once a gentle father, felt a new purpose rise inside him. Cold, quiet, and deadly. Vengeance. The investigation ended faster than Michael expected. Too fast. Too conveniently. The police wrote it off as a faulty electrical line. The report was thin, rushed, and filled with assumptions instead of evidence. Every word felt like an insult to the memory of his children. Michael stood in the station, staring at the detective who refused to meet his eyes, and realized something much bigger was being hidden. So he began his own investigation. He went back to the ruins of his home long after the ashes cooled. He walked through the charred skeleton of what used to be his life, finding small clues the investigators either missed or intentionally ignored. He traced the scorch marks and discovered the unmistakable pattern of a shaped charge, a professional explosive, not an accident. He found remnants of a detonator casing buried under collapsed wood. And in the dirt outside the window, he found the blueprints again, this time clearer, deeper. They belonged to a man who wasn't just large, but trained. Someone who knew how to walk without leaving too much trace. Someone careful, disciplined, and deadly. Michael took pictures of everything, storing them in a folder that he locked inside his closet. He didn't tell anyone, not his friends, not the police, not even the world that thought he was simply grieving. He let them believe he was broken, Because broken men are ignored. Broken men are underestimated. Broken men are invisible. And he needed to be invisible. Weeks passed in a fog of silence. But Michael's mind never slept. He traced the blueprint design to a specific manufacturer, one used mostly by private security and military contractors. That narrowed his search from millions to thousands. Then, through a late-night call to a former colleague in Denver, he got something he never expected, a name. A man known only by his field alias, Craven. Craven wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a contractor. He was something worse. A ghost hired by powerful men to destroy the lives of innocent ones. Michael's heart twisted when he learned. Craven was in Colorado the same week his house burned down. Still, something didn't make sense. Why would a professional killer target a simple family man? Why Emily? Why Aaron? The answer came from the last person he expected, his late wife's best friend, Sarah. She visited him months after the incident, bringing food he didn't touch and sympathy he didn't want. But during their conversation, she mentioned something that froze the air around him. His wife had been receiving anonymous messages for months before the fire, threats, warnings, and she never told him. Michael felt the ground shift beneath his feet. His wife had been hiding something dangerous, something worth killing for. That night, he sat alone in the dark, staring at the last picture he took of his family. His daughter's gap-toothed smile, his son's messy hair, his wife standing behind them, smiling, but with eyes that seemed to hide a secret. Michael whispered a promise into the darkness. "I'm coming for the truth, and then I'm coming for him." Michael's search shifted from grief to purpose, from mourning to hunting. Every night he sat in his dimly lit basement, mapping out connections between the mysterious assassin Craven and the secret his wife kept from him. Strings, notes, photographs. The walls slowly transformed into a battlefield of truth. What began as a tragedy was becoming a war. He dug into his wife Anna's life, the parts she never let him see. She had always been gentle, soft-spoken, a school counselor who spent her days helping troubled children. But the digital trail he uncovered told a different story. One she must have buried years ago. Before she met him, she had worked briefly for a private organization that specialized in intelligence gathering. Not government, not police, something in between, something secret and powerful. Michael found encrypted emails, hidden folders on an old laptop she kept at the back of her closet. When he cracked the files, his blood went cold. Anna had been contacted by her former organization just months before the fire. They wanted her to return, not for a job, but for a favor. They were tracking a criminal network tied to weapons smuggling and assassinations, and they believed Anna had vital information about one of their primary targets, a man known for orchestrating high-profile attacks without leaving any trace. A man whose presence always signaled death. Craven. Michael stared at the screen for hours, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. His wife had been drawn back into a world she escaped. She tried to protect him. She tried to protect their children. But she underestimated the depth of darkness she was dealing with. Craven wasn't after Michael's family by chance. He was sent, paid, ordered. And the worst part, Anna knew she was in danger. She just never realized how far they would go. Michael felt the weight of betrayal and sorrow pushing him toward the edge. But instead of breaking, he sharpened. Every truth he uncovered made him stronger, colder, more focused. One evening, after weeks of tracking Craven's operations, Michael found a breakthrough, a warehouse outside Denver known to be a temporary ground for mercenaries and black market dealers. Rumors said Craven visited the place often, collecting intel and supplies. Michael drove there at midnight. The warehouse loomed like a steel monster against the moonlit sky. Shadows moved inside. Voices echoed. Men with weapons patrolled the area. Michael had no training, no experience in combat, but he had something stronger than skill. He had nothing left to lose. He waited behind an abandoned truck until one guard drifted too far from the others. With the steel rod he brought from home, Michael struck him from behind, silencing him instantly. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the realization of what he had become. He dragged the body into the dark, took the guard's access card, and slipped inside. The smell of oil and gunmetal hit him immediately. Dozens of crates were stacked high, marked with symbols he didn't understand. Weapons, explosives, illegal tech. And at the far end of the warehouse, Michael saw something that froze his breath. A photograph of his wife, pinned on a bulletin board, next to documents labeled "Termination Confirmed." Michael's vision blurred with rage. In that moment, he made a vow that echoed through his spine like fire. "I will find Craven, and I will end him." He grabbed every file, every drive, every clue that pointed toward Craven's next move. As he prepared to leave, a shadow stepped behind him, and a voice whispered the name he hated most. Michael Ross. Michael spun around, heart pounding, only to find himself face to face with a man he had never seen before, but whose eyes held the same coldness he imagined in Craven. "You're not supposed to be here," the man said. And before Michael could move, the gunshot echoed through the warehouse, sharp and violent, throwing Michael backward. For a moment he didn't feel anything except the cold concrete under him and the ringing in his ears. The bullet had grazed his shoulder, tearing through skin, but missing bone. Pain pulsed through him, hot and electric, but he forced himself not to cry out. The man stepped closer, boots scraping against metal shavings on the floor. He wasn't Craven, Michael could tell instantly, but he was someone who knew him. Someone trained and dangerous. Michael's breathing slowed as he watched the man raise the gun again. Steady and professional. "You should have stayed broken, Michael," the man said softly. "Now you've become a problem." Michael's eyes flicked to the crates behind the man, explosives, dangerous ones. Something clicked inside him. He didn't need a gun. He needed an opportunity. When the man fired again, Michael rolled behind a steel column, the bullet slamming into metal with a vicious clang. He grabbed a shattered piece of pipe from the floor and, using his remaining strength, hurled it at the nearest crate. The impact created a spark, small but enough. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Flames shot up, licking the stacks of ammunition and lighting the room in violent orange. The man cursed and fired blindly into the smoke, but Michael was already moving. He dashed toward the side exit, clutching the files he had stolen, feeling every heartbeat pound like a war drum in his chest. Outside, the cold night air hit him like a punch, but he didn't stop. The warehouse behind him roared with growing flames. He stumbled toward his car, bleeding, dizzy, but alive. For now. By the next morning, the explosion site was all over the news. The police claimed it was a gang-related incident, but Michael knew the truth. He had just declared war, and the enemy had heard him loudly. Following the files he stole, Michael traced Craven's next move to a remote compound hidden deep in the Rocky Mountains, a place rumored to be a training ground for mercenaries. Traveling there meant leaving everything behind, even the small life he had left. But the decision was easy. His children's faces guided him with every step. After hours of hiking through snow-covered trails, Michael reached the compound. It was heavily guarded, but the explosion had forced Craven's meant to tighten security in panic. Rather than strategy, Michael used that chaos to slip through the outer perimeter. He moved with a quiet fury, like a man powered not by skill, but by pure purpose. Inside the compound's main hall, he found Craven. The man was huge, broad-shouldered, with a face carved from stone and eyes that looked dead long before death ever came for him. He stood near a map table, reviewing documents, unaware of Michael's presence. Until Michael spoke. "You killed my family." Craven turned slowly, almost amused. "Michael Ross," he said, as if greeting an old friend. "I was wondering when you'd stop hiding behind grief." Michael stepped forward. "You ruined my life." Craven shrugged. "Not personal. Your wife interfered with powerful men. She had information she shouldn't have. You and the kids just happened to live there." That broke something in Michael that he thought had already shattered. The fight was brutal. Craven was trained, experienced, and merciless. Michael was a father fueled by rage. Craven's punches were heavy, calculated. Michael's were desperate, fueled by memories of Emily's laughter and Aaron's tiny hand gripping his. Craven slammed Michael into a wall, nearly knocking the breath out of him. "You're weak," Craven growled. "A broken man trying to play soldier." Michael spit blood onto the floor and whispered, "No, I'm a father." He grabbed a shard of metal from the ground, a broken piece from one of Craven's own weapons, and with a final, primal scream, Michael drove it forward. Michael stood shaking, breathing in wild, uneven gasps. He wanted to feel relief, triumph, justice. But instead he felt only emptiness. The man who killed his family was gone, but nothing could bring them back. He walked out of the compound as the sun rose behind the mountains, painting the snow in soft gold. It was a new dawn, the first one he faced without rage clouding his eyes. He didn't know what his future held. He didn't know how to live with the scars, the physical ones and the ones carved deep inside him. But he knew one thing: his children could finally rest. His wife could finally rest. Michael Ross stepped into the cold morning light, a broken man no longer seeking revenge, but searching for the pieces of himself he once lost.